sleep is rock number one. On our 12 rocks of well-being, sleep is rock number one because it is fundamentally one of the most important things we can do to support our attention, our focus, our well-being, right? It does all of those things.
Hello, and welcome back to One Brain at a Time. I'm Adam Wright, your host.
And I'm Andy Feist, your co-host slash. That's it, really. That's all I've got to say. I've just co-host.
So smooth. What a start.
Yeah.
What a start. We thought we'd change it up because I always wonder, I always start and introduce, and then I'm like, it's not just me hosting, it's Andy Holster's hosting, it's our show together. So we thought we'd standardize it. Like those cool podcasts that everyone listens to, where everyone knows what they're doing at the start. That's not us yet, but we'll get there.
What is this? We're probably 7 months into doing this or something?
I think it's almost just over 6 because we started in September. So it's just over 6.
Wow.
Yep.
Crazy, man. But you OGs that have been here from day one and still knocking around
Oh,
listening to us chat brains, mate. You're absolute heroes, man.
Where are the day oneers at? What come and comment, come and give me an email. Where are day oneers? Reference back to AYP Spike, the old days.
Wow, damn, yeah.
Back in the old days.
It hasn't even been that long since it's been One Brain at a Time, but
No,
that feels like a long time ago. It was
that's
AYP
what I'm
Spike.
talking about. A lot of different types of thumbnail, a lot of different logos ago.
Yeah, man.
We've
We
been
are
experimenting.
evolving, and I think it's important that the show evolves as we evolve. Ain't that right, mate? And
100%.
no, it's been great, man. But how's your week been? What's been going on?
It's been a lovely week. It's been a lovely week. It's been my dad's birthday. Yesterday when recording this, but last Thursday when you're listening to this, that was lovely. The weather has just been unreal. And I just want to actually, this is a good moment to call you up on something. On the recording of the podcast a few months ago, you said March can do one. But I am so sick of this rain. I am so sick of it. It's, oh my God.
So we're
It's
now 9th of Feb, Monday morning, and I just want it to be April. Because March can do one as well, and I mean that,
do you not like March? I would like you to retract that statement because March has been insane. We love March.
I mean, the
I'm a
last
fan of
3
March.
days of March have been nice.
But I would argue the whole of March has been pretty good. There's not been any disaster.
So we had like a couple of weeks where it was just absolute trash.
I think that was in February. I'm just going to put it in February.
Well, I will not retract until I have this for another. We're the 20th today, so if this is the same until the 27th, then maybe I'll reconsider my terms of anger. But I just think it's teasing us with the nicer weather, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like, come on, like we're nearly there, but you're not quite there, and it's not the summer equinox. Is that the spring equinox?
It's the equinox tomorrow. It's 21st, so Saturday, yeah.
21st, and that's officially like English spring. So yeah, don't get me wrong, lovely flowers out and about. Love that, mate.
Lovely flowers.
And we got some nice dying flowers over there. That's nice. I'm probably saying again.
Is that related to spring or is that?
Yeah. It's very telling about mood in this flat at the moment. We're sick of it, Adam. No, we're not really, man. But to be real, we do want to move.
Get Andy a new house.
Yeah. Just
because. A new house.
Yeah, we need more space because we
need more room for those dying flowers. Got to fill more
up the gaff, mate. But that's we won't. Yeah, but if you're landlord and you're listening to this, mate, we love it. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's one of the day oneers.
Imagine, man.
He, she,
no,
they are one of the day oneers. Thank you very much for your support for the show, and just give Andy a bit more room, please. Thank you very much.
And make my rent cheaper.
If you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you don't ask, you don't receive. You got to try. Got to try these things. I'm not confident it's going to work. But yes, speaking of evolving the show, this is the normal episode. You'll receive this on a Monday, and there'll be clips of it throughout the week. But there is also now a YouTube exclusive show, like we promised there would be. We've been getting a lot more comments recently as our reels have been, I think the technical term is popping off, and we've been receiving a lot more comments. And so we're going to be starting, this is what I've always wanted to do. I wanted to start a reaction channel, and we've finally been able to create one. So we have a little, We debuted Comment Corner in an episode a few weeks ago, so now Comment Corner is a YouTube exclusive 5 minutes on a Friday where we're going to react to some comments, reply to them in good faith, only good faith comments. So only leave good faith comments because I'm not going to reply to anything that's just nonsense. But yeah, so come to the YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube, help us get to quadruple digits. It'll be. We're a little away from that now, but every little helps. One day. But yes, so come check out YouTube, come and check out Comment Corner. And today we're going to be talking about an episode that we've been speaking of teasing weather. We've been teasing. Spring's teased us. We've teased this episode or this discussion topic for, I think, the entire time this podcast's been a thing. Today we are going to talk about sleep and why sleep is so important. And now, sleep is an enormous thing. It's like sleep is an enormous process in the brain. It does a lot of things. I think we all know a little bit about the process sleep does. This is not going to be an exhaustive list of every single thing sleep does and how it works entirely. Partially because I don't know all of that. There's too much to know. But what we're going to do today instead is talk about generally what sleep does, some of the things sleep does, sleep cycles, and crucially, how you, listener, can get more sleep and get better sleep, because it's not just about lying in bed at a certain time of day. It's more, the thing we have sleep hygiene and a sleep routine, how to develop and build your sleep routine and sleep hygiene. Okay, so let's dive in. So to start with, sleep. I think the layperson, and when you ask, we work in primary schools, when you ask kids what they think sleep does, they say it recharges you, it restores your energy, and these are all obviously true things, right? One of the main things we talk about in terms of the brain science of sleep is the idea that when you're thinking throughout the day, through a very, very complicated process involving mitochondria in the cells of your brains and throughout your body, your brain produces a kind of a byproduct, a kind of gooey glue that can sit on top of your neurons and that kind of gums it up throughout the day. So one of the reasons why you feel a bit foggy at the end of the day, you feel more tired, your brain isn't quite working, it's like, maybe it might come out as a headache, it depends on the person, is literally biologically because there's a bunch of kind of, I'm going to call it gunk, that's not the technical term, but gunk in your brain, and it's blocking the synapses and it's kind of inhibiting those connections in your brain a little bit. And so one of the main things that sleep does is when you go to sleep, your brain kind of shrinks a tiny little bit and little channels are created across it, and a fluid called cerebral spinal fluid drains across it and cleans out all of that kind of goopy glue, all that plaque, all that gunk in your brain, which means that when you wake up in the morning, you've got a fresh, sparkly, clean brain that can obviously connect better and fire better. And even though you might not feel like it initially in the morning, then the next day your brain is ready to fire on all cylinders again in terms of mixing a couple of metaphors there.
Yeah, no, spot on, man. And this is not to show too much behind the curtain, but sleep is rock number one. On our 12 rocks of well-being, sleep is rock number one because it is fundamentally one of the most important things we can do to support our attention, our focus, our well-being, right? It does all of those things. So that process of cleaning out that gunkiness, to clean that out is something really important. And the two ways of doing that is exercise and sleep. So if you're not doing those two things, you are literally just holding yourself back and you're not fulfilling your capacity and you're not maximizing your sort of potential, right? Which I think is something that we all want to try and do and achieve most days if we can, and we're realistic. You're not going to feel 100% every single day of your life. It's just not going to happen. But if you don't get enough sleep and don't exercise, you're definitely not. So you're not even giving yourself a chance to feel good because you are just inhibiting your ability to do the things you need to do. And I think it's just so crucial to just understand that with sleep, it can be a constant battle, right? The amount of people you speak to and they're like, my sleep sucks, man, it's rubbish. Like you finish work at 6, you finish work at 7, you're up at 5, 6 in the morning, like you don't doesn't give you a lot of time to relax and to calm down and to wind down. So I think that's why people eat into the evening so much that you go to bed at 11, you go to bed at 12, and then you're just not giving yourself enough sort of time to rest and recover because you want to have a bit of downtime away from work, which is completely understandable. But we had this chat the other day, mate, didn't we? And we said like in the world of like high performance athletics and sport, like people that are discussing and are experts in like performance enhancing drugs and those sorts of areas have come out and said that if sleep if the benefits of sleep was turned into a PED, what you get from maximum sleep, it would be illegal,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Because
crazy.
it is such a hack. It is such a powerful thing. So if you manufactured it and put it in a little bottle, mate, you wouldn't be able to buy it because it is such a positive thing that it can do for your body and your health.
It's genuinely insane, I think, and you know, it's insane for genuinely a myriad of reasons that we will go into a couple of today. Some really fascinating kind of aspects of that, but it is like, as you say, it is fundamental, and like one of the things we would like to stress enormously in this episode of this podcast is if you are not getting 8 hours sleep, you need to get 8 hours sleep. It is as simple as that. There is nothing more important for your well-being. And the 12 rocks are all important, but there is nothing more important for your well-being than sleeping for at least 8 hours a night and consistently sleeping for that long a night. It's so, so important. And we talked about in a previous episode that it's not something you can bank. You can't go 5 hours of sleep a night for the weekdays and then catch up on the weekends for a couple of reasons that we'll go into in a little bit. You need to be making sure that every single day you are getting at least as much as you can. I do appreciate sometimes you're not going to get 8 hours sleep. Sometimes you're, and that's okay. But the consistency of it, you've got to be getting more sleep every night, and it's just so, so important. A couple of reasons why. So there's a bunch of gunk in your brain throughout the day that kind of gets, your brain is working really, really hard, right? And it's thinking all the time, and that produces a byproduct. And we talk a lot about different parts of the brain, different regions of the brain. One of the kind of primary places that there's a lot of this plaque buildup is in an area we call we don't call it, that's what it's called, but it's called the prefrontal cortex. We call it the insight circuits. And that is what allows this process of metacognition. The thing we talk about all the time, this ability to sit above our emotions, our kind of current behaviors, our brain activity, and notice what's going on and kind of, challenge it and change it if it's not something very positive, to kind of simplify it. Because your prefrontal cortex is the kind of part of your brain that's most heavily involved in lots of have to activities that you have to do throughout the day that you wouldn't do if you would, if you could design it. You'd like work. You're not doing that on the weekend if you don't have to, right? Because that's the part of the brain that's utilized most throughout the day, doing all the things you have to do. That's where there's a lot more of this plaque buildup. So in the evenings, we find that before we go to bed, we are in our prefrontal cortex, our executive function is weaker because our brain is not connecting as much in that way. And basically, if we are not sleeping, we are not as restorative of that part of our brain the next day. And this comes back to this idea we always talk about of emergence, which, again, AYP bingo, tick, emergence, there it is again. Your body and brain project your mind every single day. And the science is as declarative on this as it possibly can be. So if you've not had at least, 6 hours sleep, but more, ideally you're getting 7 or 8 hours sleep, you are not going to have as much memory available the next day. You're not going to have as much attention available the next day. You're going to be more emotional the next day. You're going to struggle to, communicate and think. It's just, your brain is not functioning as effectively if you've not have had enough sleep the next day. And I want to talk about memory specifically here, because one of the things that happens when you sleep is your brain throughout the day. We talked about this a little bit in the learning episode a few weeks ago. When you are learning something, the learning doesn't happen in the moment that you're kind of taking in new information. It happens in the gap between. One of the main points of that gap between is sleeping, because when you are sleeping, your hippocampus coordinates the free firing of those neurons and creates neurogenesis, creates new connections, generates those new neurons. Neurons grow at the speed of plants, and a lot of that kind of refiring happens when you are sleeping. But one of the reasons that sleep is so important is for memory is because when you are sleeping, your brain strengthens the memories and the new things you've learned in that process. And if you are not getting as much sleep, your memory will not be as strengthened as much. So you will not remember as much about the previous day. This is one of the reasons why banking sleep is not a thing, because obviously your unique experiences in a day, the things you learn are unique to that day. You will not have the opportunity to catch up on that sleep, on that refiring of those neurons a couple of days down the line if you did not do it on that day and at that time. So it's I think putting it in the frame of as a performance enhancing drug, like it's just insanely powerful for our brains. And there's a researcher, Matthew Walker, who wrote a really famous book on sleep, which is a fantastic book that everyone should read. It's called Why We Sleep. And he posits there's a theory that sleep evolved before consciousness. That before human beings were human beings, before we were Homo sapiens, we were kind of kind of, I want to say fish, but I know that's probably not the correct term for it, but that's all I can describe it as. Kind of bottom feeding on the bottom of kind of the massive oceans of the earth, and consciousness hadn't evolved yet, but sleep had, because it's the most efficient form of process of kind of being of an alive being. Because I don't know if this is going to go into podcast because it's so nerdy and weird, but it's just the idea that it's such a fundamental part of being human, and it's such a fundamental part of our evolution, that sleep is literally one of the most fundamental parts of our kind of natural processes, and it is so necessary. And it is, I think, to go back to the point you were saying as well, it is one of the ones that we are probably the most lax on, because when we go to sleep, our mind, our consciousness recedes into our brain. We disappear for a bit. It's the one that we are maybe most hesitant. If we've worked a long day, we don't want to go to sleep. We want to have a bit more time off, because as soon as you wake up, you've got to go back to work again if it's a weekday, you know? So I do get that sense. And I used to hate going to sleep when I was younger, when I was like a kid in school, because it was like, as soon as I go to bed, I've got to wake up and go to school again. I don't want to do that. I want to stay awake now because I've got this evening now. But it's so, so important that we reframe sleep and understand it in the way that it is absolutely paramount to our well-being.
I think, and here we go, right? Adam's done your brain bits, so enjoy your brain bits. He's done it. All right, it's my
Brain
turn
bits.
to talk society bits and bobs and
Ooh, I like this.
knick-knacks.
Okay.
So, you ready for society? You ready for this? I'm going to break down society and sleep. You ready for this, man? This is going to be sensational. So, so
Society
it's
bits and
basically
bobs.
what I think is really important, right? Is that when we when we talk about sleep, and you talk about it with people, and we're surrounding ourselves with head teachers and CEOs of school trusts, and there will be, hopefully there'll be a range of people listening to this, right? And just being in this setting and environment we are at the moment, you talk about sleep, and it is sort of, people would have convinced themselves that they're getting as much sleep as they can, right? Because they're busy, very busy, highly successful individuals that feel like there isn't enough time in the day to sleep, right? And it's so fundamental to recovery and rest and to process that they would have convinced themselves, right? And I know they would have done, because I speak to people all the time about this, and that they think that them getting 5, 6 hours, that's all they need to function. That's all they need to function. And to some extent, that's probably true. You can still function. You're just not functioning at 100%. So if you're killing it and crushing it and smashing it on 5, 6 hours a night sleep, oh, your potential and the capacity and your bandwidth to deal and manage your emotions, to deal with adversity that happens every single day, will just get heightened even more if you get that 2 hours extra. So we will, and society has convinced itself that we are coping with the minimal sleep that we get. And I think that is something that we've got wrong, because we break the rhythms and the sleep cycles by setting alarms. Evolutionary speaking, we're not really built to have alarms and to wake up and break a rhythm of sleep. We're meant to just wake up naturally and sort of wake up and drift into the day. That's not what happens. We have to break that cycle because we have to get up to work stupid o'clock. So that's already fundamentally something we've got quite interestingly, catastrophically wrong, right? So that's one thing. A further point to make is that we kind of, it's we don't really speak about sleep, right? We don't speak about sleep. I think it's hilarious that when you're a kid, you're a teenager, the last thing you want to do is go to bed. That's the last thing you want to do. I'm speaking on behalf of myself here. As an adult, I love it, mate. I'm all
Yeah,
over it. Like,
literally.
it's such a good part of the day when you get into bed, man,
Oh,
and you can just sleep. It's wonderful. It's magnificent. So obviously in the settings we're working in schools, when you talk to the primary kids and our clients after in the afternoons and evenings, you talk to them about sleep. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 in the morning. Like, and I had one the other day said they feel more productive in the nighttime. And you have these night owl people, right? And it's just a really interesting topic of conversation, man, because it's like, oh, you don't know. You get to go to bed at 7. That's wonderful, man. I wish I could go to bed at 7 these days. Do you know what I mean? So it's just funny that as adults, we probably enjoy that process much more than what kids and teenagers do. Um, Maybe not teenagers. I know they start to get to a bit of a place. I remember going home from school when year 11 and like sleeping from like 3 in the afternoon till 5. And that was just
there's a
like,
lot
what
of,
a
for
crazy time.
100%. There's a lot of like, so I think what we'll do now is we'll jump into like, sleep's really important. Again, we can't go into all of the process of what it does, but I think we'll jump into like what you can do about your sleep now and what you should be doing about your sleep now, and some of the ways you can kind of understand it more. There's a lot of science around teenager sleep cycles and how teenagers, like a toddler, for example, sleeps for a lot of the time. A lot of because their brain is working so hard, because it's learning everything for the first time. It's like, figuring out how the body works and that stuff. Like it needs a lot of sleep to recover and rest from that and to refire those neurons. And same with teenagers. Teenagers' brains, everyone's brains develop and change, but teenagers' brains are doing it at an accelerated rate. So the sleep is so, so important. So one of the things that's like, massively pro education in schools, but one of the problems with the current education system is how early schools start for teenagers, because it is often impacting their sleep, and teenagers need a bit more sleep, and there's a bunch of science as to why, which we'll go into in a second. Teenagers their sleep cycles get pushed back a little bit later as they become teenagers, and that means they're not then sleepy when they need to be going to bed, so they're not getting their full 8 hours sleep, which means it's detrimentally affecting them in school the next day. So let's talk about a very, very small part of the brain. And so just to put it in this context, your brain has about 86 billion neurons in it. The bit I'm talking about right now is 20,000 neurons. So in the brain, this is like infinitesimally small, right? And neurons are obviously very small. To simplify it, there's a part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, okay? And this is the bit...
What? Pardon?
Suprachiasmatic nucleus. If you ask me to spell it, not happening, mate. Google it.
It sounds like a really nerdy part of like Mary Poppins, isn't it?
It does. It does. I don't know when she brings that in, but maybe she does. Maybe that's in the film.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very small region of your brain, and basically it takes in the light signals from the world and dictates something called your circadian rhythm, your chronotype. Okay? This shifts a little bit throughout our lives, but broadly, we all have a fairly set chronotype. We discussed this in a previous episode. This is kind of when you would naturally wake up if you had no outside stimulus, no alarms, nothing waking you up, and when you would naturally go to bed if you weren't either forcing yourself to stay awake or, kind of making yourself go to bed earlier. We all have slightly different ones. There's an evolutionary advantage to that because, again, we discussed this previously, but the people who go to bed later were then protecting the people who went to bed earlier in the small caveman tribes who were living in. This is something that you, listener, need to work out what yours is, because whilst it can be adapted a little, it changes a little bit throughout your life, and I imagine it will have changed. It is a fairly set thing in your brain. So you are likely either a morning person, someone kind of in the middle, or a night person. We often call them larks and owls. So a lark is a morning person, and an owl is an evening person.
Why does lark sound offensive? Why does it sound like you're cutting morning people out?
I'm not trying to.
Done it?
No.
You're a lark.
I'm a lark.
Mate.
I can't be cussing them out when I'm one of them. This is my gang, my people. So one of the most important things is to kind of work out where we are on the spectrum and where we are on this scale. Okay, and this feeds into a little bit of what we're talking about a little bit later. But just on teenagers and their sleep cycles a little bit, because this is fascinating. I find this utterly unbelievable, and it's so, so cool. So teenagers, your sleep cycle has or will kind of shift a little bit later into the evening. So even if you're going to bed really early, and then you'll start to find yourself falling asleep a little bit later, just naturally, you'll just be staying up later till beyond 10, maybe 11, maybe 12, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. Lots of the teenagers we work with, that's a reality of it, right? And they're still waking up at 6, but they're naturally going to bed a little bit later. This has an evolutionary advantage because, again, the sleep cycles of our tribes were kind of set in a way that it meant that certain groups fell asleep before other groups. But the reason that teenagers kind of synchronized their sleep cycles to drift a little bit later was because then, for teenagers in the caveman tribes, you had about an hour, 2 hours of teenagers being the only ones who were awake, which allowed for them to kind of naturally progress their little bit of independence that they were starting to develop as they grew up and wanted to separate from parents and separate from the kind of family dynamics in those tribes. So evolutionarily, teenagers' sleep cycles are pushed back to try and allow them to kind of, I don't know what the term would be, like kind of be freer to
break away from
the family,
your parents, and create more of your own identity.
Exactly, and that is what is happening often with teenagers, because you're talking, this was me when I was a teenager, talking to my friends late at night on Snapchat. That's what we were doing, wasn't it? And that's why our sleep cycles kind of naturally progress a bit later. There's obviously an element here about sleep cycles to do with phones and screens, and that is kind of artificially keeping us awake, but naturally your sleep cycle will drift throughout your life. And then as you become, as you finish your teenage years and you kind of become an adult, your sleep cycle will probably revert a little bit back to more towards what it was. And that's not to say that everyone becomes a morning person, as I've said earlier. That's not the case. So it's just, I just find it fascinating, and that these things drift and change throughout your lives a little bit. But that whole long story aside, the thing you need to take away from that is you need to work out your sleep cycle and when you are naturally most drowsy. And bad news if you're an owl, society is not geared towards you.
No, sir.
That doesn't mean we can't do nothing about it. We'll come to that in a second.
I think this is why this is our dynamic, my friend, and I'll speak for ourselves. It works well because you are a lark, you freak, and I am an owl. To be honest with you, what's it called, Adam, when you're neither, mate, and you just any sort of
lazy.
Yeah. There you go, lazy.
Not true. Joking.
I was looking for it. No, man, I can't stand the mornings, and I don't really like late nights either. Okay. So I think my ideal, my perfect sort of sleep rhythm would be 9:30 until 9:30 in the morning.
Lovely.
9:30. That would be.
You like a lot of sleep. That's 12 hours.
Bliss. That would be gorgeous, mate. And you listeners don't know how tall I am. It clearly didn't help me growing when I was a teenager, because that didn't help at all, mate. I've been this height since I was about 13 years old.
You're 7'2", people.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't think I'm just probably above average.
Yeah, I'd say so.
No, man, I'm definitely not. So, I think and talking on a evolutionary and a sort of a growing up standpoint, like sleep for a teenager is common knowledge. You grow in your sleep. Like that is teenage. Like you need loads of sleep when you're a teenager because you are growing, and you need to get the sleep because growing, believe it or not, is a really tiring process for the body. It is really tiring. So you need to get the most sleep and rest. So if you're a teenager at the moment listening to this and you're like, why am I tired all the goddamn time? And that's how I felt when I was a teenager, man. Just like, I'm absolutely shot to bits. Not because I was working hard, because I don't know, just because I was a teenager, right? So just forgive yourself a little bit and say it's okay to feel really tired all the time, but then you do owe it to yourself to have that sleep hygiene and do the right things that are going to support you on that journey. And I just wanted to talk a little bit, and this is a bit of a U-turn, not massively, but like the technology we have these days, right? Just because Mr. James Feist, he always comes into my mind when we do this podcast, man. My brother, right?
Love him.
The absolute geezer he is, man. And he's obsessed. And my cousin is as well. And I see my cousin 3 times a year. And every time I see him, man, he just bangs on about his flipping Whoop and Garmin.
Oh, lovely.
So he's that sort of bloke, and so is my brother, right? Jim, I do put you in that category, pal. So I love him, man.
I love how you do. This is how you communicate with him. You don't text him. You just send him podcasts.
He'll message me on Monday going, "Yeah, man, that's that's
me. Yeah.
So every time I see him, right, he lives about 40 minutes away from me, and we'll see each other probably, I don't know, once every few weeks. Every time he will tell me about his sleep, and he'll tell me about his sleep hygiene, because the technological advances we've had, like if you wear one of these Whoops or Garmins, and if you get like a really advanced one, right, it tells you so much. It tells you about circadian rhythms. It tells you a nuts amount, like how much of REM sleep you've had, how much those sorts of things and stats that you're getting. And he's just become fully obsessed with it, man. So, and it will say if you're in. Now, Adam, this is the bit where we either myth bust or agree that this is a thing, right? And I've sprung this on you. Okay. So it sounds like a myth, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. This is where I should have chose my lack of research for these things. So it says every morning it will say if he's in a sleep deficit or sleep surplus.
Okay.
So it will tell him if he's had more than what he needs based on his activities during the day, or if he's had less than he needs based on his sort of physical exertion throughout that 24 hours. That's cool, man. I don't know if that's a real thing.
That will be based basically the thing with these sleep trackers, and I think I have an Apple Watch that I wear to sleep. Like I do track my sleep, but the thing with sleep trackers is the only piece of information they're using is
Heart rate.
a gyroscope and heart rate. And so you can get a lot from heart rate, but also the heart rate, basically they're not as accurate and they cannot necessarily make all these claims with a massive degree of accuracy that they're claiming. There's obviously a bit of truth to it. But what that will be is basically they'll have a bunch of algorithms and big data models on exertion during the day, and then kind of roughly some maths about how long that takes to recover from those things. So I don't think it's like complete twaddle, but it's not like you don't want to be waking with all these things, with all this technology that can help and aid, and I think there's a truth to that stuff being helpful. Like my watch tells me how good my sleep was last night, but there was one day last week where it told me I had great sleep, and I was like, I did not have good sleep last night. You know, if you've had good sleep, you feel it. You know,
don't just take the word of your watch, mate.
For sure, you'd be like, "Oh, I've had a great sleep last night," and you've said 1 hour. It's like, no, it isn't. Clearly, you didn't. But no, for sure, and I think that stuff is helpful because I think gamifying this stuff can be quite a helpful way of making sure that we're better at it. Like, I do find that the fact that my watch knows when I'm asleep means that I'm like, okay, got to do it for the watch. Gonna make sure my watch thinks I'm good because it's quite satisfying getting 100. My sleep scores out of 100, and I'm always in the high 90s. I'm like, that's good. It's a good day. Just saying,
man.
I'm always up there, and that gamifying is helpful because it does mean consistently I'm getting better quality sleep. So that's really helpful. But you don't need to buy a super expensive watch to just make sure you're getting sleep. And I think that one of the things we mentioned a lot is sleep hygiene. We haven't actually defined what we mean by sleep hygiene. So I think it's a useful thing to jump into, which is not the idea. It's not brushing your teeth. Obviously that's important, but that's not a sleep thing necessarily. But it's more the idea that hygiene is to do with cleanliness and making sure that things have a routine. And sleep hygiene is just basically when you've worked out what your sleep routine is, you need to get 8 hours sleep. We need to block out 8 hours of time between when you need to wake up and when you need to go to bed then. And then the sleep hygiene happens a little bit before that. I need to be in bed and asleep by this time process. And it's basically the idea of putting yourself in your parasympathetic nervous system, calming yourself down, getting yourself ready for a sleep state. Basically boring yourself to sleep. For people who struggle to fall asleep earlier than, if you are a night owl and you need to go to bed earlier, you're going to have to bore yourself. You're going to have to find yourself, being, reading, doing things that, low lights, like just being as unstimulated as you possibly can to help yourself, to give yourself every single possible chance to fall asleep a little bit earlier. So sleep hygiene, one of the main things we talk about with sleep hygiene is this idea that your phone, if you possibly can, should not be in the room with you, because your phone is a disaster for sleep. Because, to put it really simply, it's far too interesting. It's just your brain wants to use it, talk about it, like flip on, do the addiction stuff. We talked about that before. Like it's too interesting for your brain. And if you are using your phone, your brain is not going to be able to calm itself down and fall asleep. And this is a contentious issue because I have this conversation with clients a lot. I have this conversation with people in primary schools a lot, and they say, I actually fall asleep watching like TV, and I fall asleep watching screens, and so my screen isn't that interesting. And there's a bit of a balance to these things. Obviously you can fall asleep on a screen, but what's actually happening there is the kind of weight of sleep pressure in your brain is overwhelming the fact that your brain is quite interested in this thing. And there's obviously a lot of arguments about white noise and stuff like that. Like there'd be too much to go into in this episode, but for as a general rule, screens are far too interesting, and even if they don't necessarily always stop you falling asleep, they will affect the depth of sleep that you are able to achieve. And that is such an important part because we won't go into them today, but you've already mentioned them broadly. Again, there's NREM sleep, there's REM sleep, and those happen at different parts of the night. If you are on your screen super late into the evening, even if you are able to fall asleep very quickly, your ability to get into your NREM sleep, your REM sleep might be affected by that stuff. And you might wake up more, and that stuff. So you need to make sure that we're not doing that. And for older people, making sure that we're not drinking water just before we go to bed, because it's going to wake us up and we're going to go to the toilet. And that's going to mean that it's affecting our sleep, consistently throughout the night. And I think that there's a lot more to sleep than just go to bed on time and wake up at the same time. For sure. Obviously, that's a kind of a fundamental part of
it's
it.
It's routine, isn't it? Like you said, it's getting into your routine, your bit of comfortability where you know that I do this at this time and I do my teeth here and I go for a shower, whatever, and then I wind down, read a book, read the history of barrel production in the 16th century.
That's going to put you to sleep, incredibly.
Well, that's actually one of the most exciting volumes there is out there. So I'd recommend maybe moving to the 18th century barrel production. So I think it's just really important.
That might be your best joke you've ever made.
Thank you so much. I was thinking about it the whole time you were speaking.
That was so funny. Well done.
Thank you, man. So I just think it's just really important to understand, like you say, we're constantly just trying to be metacognitive and self-aware and just understanding how you operate and the sort of impulses you have, which is for most of us, go on your phone, watch telly, those sorts of things, but fighting against that and actually going, I will just read and I joke, I jest, but like I read books that I find really interesting, but that still helps me go into my parasympathetic nervous system and calms me down. So it's just really important. And I think there is a bit of a disclaimer just to make, because you mentioned water before bed if you're a bit of a elderly seasoned individual listening to the podcast, and I think there's an element of that sort of thing that is unavoidable if you've got certain
Oh,
medical
for sure.
conditions.
No, for 100%. And
But like that,
yes.
that's red tape for us.
No, exactly, and I think, and this is why this is a tricky thing to do. In like a podcast episode, is like to give out kind of uniform advice to everyone. It's not that everyone's
For
cases
sure.
are different. Like I remember, knowing this stuff from younger than I am now. I used to live in university housing. I used to live, at home with my family. I couldn't have my phone outside my room because it wasn't my room. There's the only place I could have it really because it was my
Yeah.
only space that was mine. Like I had to have my phone in my room. Now that I live on my own, I can literally put my phone in another room from where I sleep. But that wasn't something I could do. So anything that's like uniform, like you have to do this, is not true. But what we're talking about here is you need to develop a kind of, the general rules are you need to have 8 hours in bed. You need to ideally be in bed a bit before your kind of cut off window where you need to try and be asleep, and you need to be getting yourself into your parasympathetic nervous system. So low stimulation, ideally off screens, reading things. If you're reading on an iPad, okay, fine, but let's turn notifications off. Like there's black and white the screen. Like let's be as low stimulation as possible to try and let ourselves fall asleep. And the other thing is to try and keep that consistent across days, as much as you possibly can. Try and go to bed at the same time every night and wake up at the same time every day, including weekends, because that is really, really important because it's about consistency. Because your brain is very, very good at habits and routines. You can make your sleep habit a habit, which means that you'll naturally find yourself waking up at the same time every day. And I find this, I wake up at 7 o'clock basically every single day, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but it like doesn't vary very much. I go to bed at about, I'm in bed by 10 every night, right? That's kind of my rule. Some nights when you're out late, you're at a gig or something, you can't be in bed by 10. I still wake up at 7 because my brain's learned that. Even though I then wake up and I'm like, man, I need more sleep. The habit and the routine of it is something your brain has learned. So that's why it's so, so important. And that's what I mean about you can't change your chronotype. You can't change if you're an owl that you want to go to bed later, you would naturally go to bed later. But by forming a habit, you can help yourself to get better sleep every night than you would if you were just like, I'm gonna wait till I'm tired. If you kind of force it a little bit, if that makes sense. But yeah, you're 100% right. None of this stuff is universal advice that applies to everyone because it is more complicated than that. Like I wake up in the middle of the night and I go to the toilet sometimes, like and I don't have a medical condition that requires that, and it is more complicated than you can't just take each of these advice and then have fantastic sleep. It matters. And if you're really struggling with sleep, some people have conditions like insomnia, which like categorically there's a certain level of routine that can help, but there's a certain level of stuff that not much we can do about some of the underveiling stuff in there. So get in contact if you've got a specific sleep need that you are struggling with, then please get in contact. We'll do our best to help you, and obviously talk to doctors, talk to medical practitioners and professionals in terms of this stuff because they know as much as you hopefully now do how important sleep is, and it's just the main thing, as we said at the start, to take away from this episode is just it is so vital that you get more sleep. And I say get more sleep because the chances are you're not getting enough. Obviously getting too much sleep is also a problem, but getting too little sleep is by far a bigger issue. So you need to be getting more sleep. You need to be getting at least 7.5 hours a night. Some people need more, some people need slightly less, but you do not need 6. You do not need 5. You cannot get by on 4. It's not true. Cannot. You might be able to in the moment, as you said earlier, but we haven't even gone into long-term health effects of sleep. Basically, every single horrible thing that can happen when you get older, if you don't look after your body, is worsened by a lack of sleep when you're younger. So you need to be getting more sleep now. So, not trying to scare everyone, but go to bed
Right now.
right now at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning when this episode comes out. Yeah.
No, I think, and like you said, man, we'll definitely have. We got a few weeks to come in the next few weeks. We'll discuss other elements of sleep, just because it is such a complex and vast topic to discuss. So, I think, yeah, looking forward to that one already, man.
Should be fun. Should be fun. But yes, thank you very much for listening. Again, email the show. We're getting a lot more comments. Come and supply some comments for Comments Corner on YouTube. Come and check out Comments Corner on YouTube as well, by the way. It's good fun. We haven't recorded it yet, but I'm assuming it'll be good fun.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be fantastic. But yes, come and email the show. When I say we've got some genuinely really exciting stuff coming on the show in the next few weeks, I'm real about that. We're talking guests. We're talking actual things, like in events, things. Yes. What?
Things.
What's he talking about? Yeah, it's very exciting. So come and subscribe. Come check out the YouTube. Come check us out on social media. Come and get involved in the show. And yes, thank you very much for listening as always. And shout out to those day oneers, people, especially
nice one, guys. Look after yourselves, and we'll catch up very soon.
We'll see you very soon. See you on next Monday.